Miguel Alacran Berchelt came through in dominant fashion against Francisco Bandido Vargas. Really good fight, really great performance from Berchelt. He is now the WBC Super Featherweight champion. Of course, now leaving behind his WBO interim championship. The WBO interim championship that had made him the mandatory to both Vasyl Lomachenko and Roman Martinez. Neither Roman Martinez nor Vasyl Lomachenko wanted to fight him, yet Francisco Vargas did, even though he wasn't even his mandatory. He was the mandatory for the other two. And he went in there and he showed improved, and he did a damn good job of just piece by piece taking apart Francisco Vargas. The judges, I don't know how they had it as close as they did. They had it 96-94, two of them, and 95-95. I thought Berchelt was damn near washing Francisco Vargas. I thought he hammered him, he bludgeoned him, he opened the cuts above his eyes, he completely damaged over his eyebrows, put hematomas up over his eyebrows, had him swollen up really badly, and just had him looking like a completely different person. He looked pretty much unrecognizable after the fight. His face was completely destroyed, and this is no slack on Francisco Vargas. He fought like hell. He fought with the heart and the grit of a warrior that we've known him to, the heart and the grit of the warrior that he's shown against Orlando Salido, that he showed against Takashi Miura, but against similar stablemate in terms of Miguel Berchelt, a guy who both of these guys were part of Mexico's Olympic squad. Vargas actually representing the Mexico more in international competition, whereas Berchelt tended to be a bit more just in the sparring nature, as a part of a team, but almost like the part of the B squad. He definitely showed that he wasn't part of the B squad tonight. He basically, kind of like Roy Jones said, fought his big brother, took down his big brother, and the student became the master, basically, is what happened against Vargas. He just looked a little bit cleaner, a little bit sharper than Vargas. He definitely had more power than Vargas in those exchanges. Vargas, even though he appeared to have the slightly more textbook and cleaner technique in a textbook fashion, I think that Berchelt's overall punch variety and his ability to stream off combinations without stopping, especially with the way that he ended his combinations frequently in a jab, and that jab almost never stopped landing. It's kind of similar to something that Leo Santa Cruz does. It's like he'll throw a combination, but he'll finish it with a jab as he's moving out. So it's like even if he moves straight back, he's still throwing a jab out there in order to make you think about coming forward after him in order to throw another punch. Just a very clever technique in order to get away with something that normally would get you in a lot of trouble. But Berchelt did a fantastic job. He's now a champion, one of the better champions in the division. Really a packed division too, a jam-packed division in terms of the top-rated fighters. You have several fighters, a couple of them that I already mentioned in this weight class. You got Orlando Salido out there. Orlando Salido was in the crowd. He was looking to try and get a rematch with Francisco Vargas. Of course, you had Takashi Miura on the undercard. I'll mention his fight in a separate video versus Mickey Roman. Miura came through with a solid victory there. You have Jezreel Corrales, the WBA champion, who dethroned, upset Takashi Uchiyama last year, and then did it again on New Year's. Managed to repeat the fight, although by decision as opposed to by knockout. Jason Sosa, Jose Pedraza, and then the final name, which I'll pretty much leave to Max Kellerman in terms of what he has to say about him. So let me just play this really quick.
Max Kellerman. What do you want to see next in the 130-pound weight class?
Really interesting situation at 130 pounds right now, because you do have a deep and talented and action-packed kind of division, but atop the division is Vasyl Lomachenko, who seems to be a couple of standard deviations better than everybody else. But because...
Makes me wonder exactly how you're a couple of standard deviations above a man that you lost to in Orlando Salido. Not to mention a couple of standard deviations above a man that actually defeated Salido and Francisco Vargas. Not to mention a couple of standard deviations above a man who defeated that man in Miguel Berchelt, and did it quite handily, I may add.
20s by the time he got to this country, and because he's not a devastating knockout puncher, that's not what he's known for, he doesn't have the kind of fight.
Salido and Vargas were not known as devastating knockout punchers either.
Creates the economic incentive for the rest of the pack to necessarily line up to fight him when they can make money fighting each other.
Yet he's the cash cow of the division. He definitely gets paid more than everybody else. significantly more, by several hundreds of thousands, by pretty much a double. He's getting paid double what all these other guys are making. You think that they wouldn't fight him? I mean, Miguel Berchelt seemed very much anxious to fight him and very happy with the fact that he was the mandatory for Lomachenko, in spite of the fact that Roman Martinez blatantly ducked him. 2 weeks before they were scheduled to fight, after a purse bid had already been done and Berchelt's team won the purse bid, Roman Martinez ducked out of the fight with a supposed injury, and then all of a sudden that injury disappears within a couple of weeks before the fight is even supposed to happen, and he announces a fight with Vasyl Lomachenko. So, I mean, you decide.
Was correctly perceived as the kingpin of the division.
No, Max. Incorrectly received as or perceived, as the kingpin of the division. If anybody's the kingpin division, it's the man who beat the top guy in Jezreel Corrales. Not to mention the fact that, I mean, like I said, Lomachenko lost to Salido lost to Vargas lost to Berchelt. And the Berchelt-Vargas fight wasn't even close. The Vargas and Salido fight definitely was. The Salido-Lomachenko fight was not close. That was a clear decision victory for Salido, regardless of what Bob Arum's influence over the judges had to do with it.
One of the best, if not the best, pound-for-pound fighter in the world.
And no, he's not anywhere close to, if not the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. He does not measure even close to the things that Roman Gonzalez, Naoya Inoue, Sergey Kovalev, Golovkin has a better overall record in terms of actually dominating and destroying opposition that he's heavily favored against.
Berchelt, who just won a belt, may want to cash in against the other fighters more on their level than by lining up.
Yeah, I agree. He should cash in on fighters more on his level, above where Lomachenko's at.
To fight Lomachenko, which seems on paper at least to be a pretty good bet for a loss. That said, Lomachenko did lose to Salido, and maybe some of these 130-pound fighters feel, you know what, maybe he'll lose to me too. That's what I hope for, because I'd like to see the best fight the best in this division.
A tremendous...
You'd like to see the best fight the best in this division, yet you're pretty much trying to advise against that altogether. It seems like you'd rather watch Vasyl Lomachenko score knockouts over random people that, that really don't deserve a shot at his title in the first place, as opposed to somebody that was the mandatory for it. But, it just goes to show that it never seems to stop with a lot of the bias that we see with a lot of these commentators, whether it be on HBO, Showtime, or otherwise. It's really unfortunate that they have to go out and deceive the public the way that they do. And not only that, but the fact that so many people amongst that aren't a part of the press, that aren't a pundit necessarily, that are just more of a casual fan, pretty much eat everything that these guys say wholesale and take it in and just believe every single little bit of contradictory information that they're putting out there. Contradictory in terms of actual truth and also in terms of what they themselves say. I frequently have heard Max Kellerman say that I tell it like it is and you say it the way that you want it to be to people such as Stephen A. Smith. And yet it seems like it's absolutely the reverse, Max. So I'm really just curious as to when you're actually going to start being honest on some of these broadcasts and not basically trying to, bloviate about Vasyl Lomachenko on virtually every single chance that you get. And it's not even just you, it's pretty much the entire HBO crew. It's really unfortunate that in fights that don't even involve the man, that you have to mention about the fact that he's the best pound for pound and this and that. And yet you have several other fighters who are head and shoulders, have overall better records and don't have a recent loss as compared to him, and don't have a recent loss to a guy that's been beaten a number of times in a number of different ways by the likes of Yuri Gamboa, Mikey Garcia, Cristobal Cruz, etc. And yet he's somehow this ascendant, transcendent fighter that nobody else can match and that nobody's ever seen before. It's really just absolutely astonishing to me. But, that's pretty much my rant about that. Miguel Berchelt had a fantastic win, and I'm sorry to unfortunately take away from that a little bit with my overall rant about bias in the sport of boxing, but it just goes to show, Berchelt was a guy that wasn't really heralded coming in this fight. He's one of these guys that a lot of people online, they'll say, oh, I don't know who that is, so he must not be any good. Vargas is going to win this fight. No. I'm one of the very few people that said straight up and down that Miguel Berchelt was a serious problem, that he was a serious threat, that there's a reason why Roman Martinez bitched out and ducked him. There's a reason why Vasyl Lomachenko ducked him. Yes, he ducked him because he was his mandatory and he fought somebody else instead of him. And Vargas stepped up to the plate, and props to Vargas. He fought a guy that he really didn't have to fight. A guy that's not even a Golden Boy fighter, as far as I understand, unless they maybe signed some sort of deal where they are co-promoting him in the U.S. now. A guy that was a B-side, and a guy that you could tell was a B-side by virtue of the terrible scorecards that the judges turned in spite of the fact that he was beating the crap out of Vargas. So props to Vargas for being a brave warrior, the way that we've always known him to be, and especially props to Miguel Berchelt for getting the win in enemy territory, on enemy turf, in spite of the fact that the commentators want to take things away from him. Even talking about Vargas' scar tissue being the difference maker in the fight, as opposed to the fact that Miguel Berchelt was just rocking him in every round. So that's pretty much all I got to say about this fight. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I definitely did. Berchelt did a damn good job. The undercard fight was excellent as well, the co-feature, Miura versus Roman. But as I said before, I'll talk about that in a separate video because it definitely deserves its own shine. Miura is definitely a warrior himself. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. I'll talk about it right now. Takashi Miura managed to get a nice knockout over Miguel Roman. Had a pretty rocky road on his way to getting there. Miura seemed to win the early rounds, especially with his good body work, good right hook to the body, good left cross up top. Miguel Roman started to come on a little bit in the second rounds. In the middle rounds, the center rounds. And he started to do some damage back to Miura, to the body. But it was pretty much just a matter of time where Miura was just able to wear Roman down in spite of the fact that he looked like he was being worn down himself. He managed to catch the second round, probably around the 8th or 9th round. And he really started taking it to Roman. Dropped him once each in the 10th, 11th, and the 12th rounds. The 12th round, that knockdown, he didn't get up from. And that was all there was to it. Takashi Miura scored a 12th round knockout over Miguel Roman in what was a fantastic fight. Wasn't an eliminator, wasn't for a title or anything. So I figured might as well just mention it in this video as opposed to doing a separate one. I tend not to really like to cover non-title bouts unless in videos of their own, unless there's really a whole hell of a lot to say about them specifically. But Miura's back in the winning side of things, back in action, back in the swing. Maybe we could get a fight between him and Salido, if not Berchelt and Salido, something like that. Or as I kind of hinted at before, Miura versus any of the other top fighters. Him versus Jason Sosa be a fantastic fight. Two big punchers against each other. And versus Jezreel Corrales, you know what I mean? Corrales is already well known in Japan. Maybe they could do it over in Japan. He already fought Uchiyama twice over there, defeated him twice. Or possibly fight against Vasyl Lomachenko. We haven't seen Vasyl Lomachenko fight really a heavy puncher the way that Miura can crack the way that he does. So that'll be an interesting test for somebody that, according to Max Kellerman, is a head and shoulders several standard deviations better than every other fighter on the planet, not regardless of weight class. So let's see if he's really about that. And that's all for this one. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.